Keisha Butts with the CTV News Update. While lawmakers on Capitol Hill questioned FBI Director Christopher Wray about the deadly insurrection, Wray told members of the Senate Judiciary Committee that the events of January 6 served as inspiration for more extremism. Wray defended the Bureau's handling of information, which suggested the prospect of violence on the 6th. Senators, meantime, questioned him about domestic terrorism. At least 250 people have been charged in connection with the attack that left 5 people dead.
In terms of domestic violent extremism, domestic terrorism, that number has grown steadily on my watch. So we've increased the number of domestic terrorism investigations from around 1,000 or so when I got here to up to about 1,400 at the end of last year to about 2,000 now. That's domestic terrorism overall.
In other news, the advocacy group Progressive Maryland is planning a rally this week in Annapolis to push for what they call real police reform. Several policing bills are currently being debated by the General Assembly. Progressive Maryland is accusing the Fraternal Order of Police of trying to water down at least one of those measures, the Law Enforcement Officers' Bill of Rights. Earlier today, CTV spoke with Delegate Alonzo Washington about these measures.
We have not seen this legislature move on police accountability or police reform in decades. So since the installment of the Law Enforcement Bill of Rights. So if we see something move, it'll be a miracle for the state of Maryland.
The rally is set for this Thursday outside the State House from 4 to 6 p.m. A Prince George's County officer fears her job is in jeopardy after she was found guilty of violating departmental policy. The case against Lieutenant Sonia Zolikoffer is related to a 2019 incident in which she requested dashcam video of an internal affairs investigation involving use of force by 2 white officers against a black man. The department says Zolikoffer was no longer assigned to the case at the time and charged her with unbecoming conduct and making a false representation. Zolikoffer, who is among a group of officers suing the department for discrimination, calls the guilty verdict by the police trial board retaliation and vows to appeal if she is fired. WMATA says 22 metro stations could close for at least a year beginning in 2022. That's if the agency doesn't secure enough funding to offset the cost of low ridership due to the pandemic. Some of the stations include Cheverly, Judiciary Square, and College Park. WMATA also says it might eliminate more than 60 bus routes. College Park's mayor says this would be terrible for the area.
We rely on the College Park Metro Station for people to come to the university, to come to the city, for people who live here in College Park to get to their jobs. So it would be terrible for them to close it down. It would push more people in their cars. It would make our traffic system more congested than it already is.
The mayor says the city council is sending a letter to WMATA tonight. Civil rights activist and Washington insider Vernon Jordan has died. Jordan was the former president of the National Urban League. He also served as field secretary for the NAACP and director of the Southern Regional Council for the Voter Education Project. He also advised the Bill Clinton presidential campaign. Jordan was 85 years old. The number of new coronavirus cases in Maryland continue to decline. The Maryland Health Department reports 468 new cases in the last 24 hours. Hospitalizations are also down, with nearly 900 residents currently in the hospital. Meantime, an additional 26 Marylanders have died from the disease. The governor appoints the nation's former CDC director as a top health advisor. Dr. Robert Redfield has been named the state's senior advisor for public health. He will help plan the state's response to the growing COVID variants. He will also assist in Maryland's COVID vaccine campaign. Redfield served as the CDC director under the Trump administration. The U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis has a COVID outbreak. Several dozen midshipmen have been placed in quarantine. 98 students were moved to a local hotel yesterday to recover from the virus. Officials say they're being checked on twice daily. On-campus students have been ordered to stay in their rooms for 10 days. The one-shot Johnson & Johnson vaccine is shipping to states across America this week. Maryland is expected to receive about 50,000 doses of the COVID vaccine. More than half of the state's first shipment of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine will be sent to the M&T Bank Stadium and the Regency Furniture Stadium. While you're watching CTV News, I'm Keisha Butts. We'll be back in one moment.
I am what child hunger looks like in America. I am a 9-year-old boy who hopes a friend invites me to a sleepover so I can have dinner. I am a 15-year-old girl who goes for walks during lunch so my friends won't know I don't have anything to eat. I am a 13-year-old boy who gets into fights at school just because I'm hungry. I was created by artificial intelligence from faces of the 1 in 7 American children who struggle with hunger. Kids you pass by every day but never knew they were hungry.
Feeding America, 200 food banks strong.
The coronavirus has affected the African American community in many ways, including a drastic drop in blood donations. This is the time to take care of one another, and blood transfusions from healthy African American donors can be a life-saving treatment for patients with sickle cell disease or cancer. The American Red Cross adheres to the highest standards of safety and infection control and urges you to come out to donate. Please, make an appointment today at redcrossblood.org.
Welcome back. The Prince George's School Board passes a $2 billion budget only hours before its deadline to do so. It comes on the heels of an ongoing controversy that has prevented regular meetings from happening. It began with new board chair Juanita Miller's accusations against her fellow board members. Miller was not present during last night's meeting. Also discussed was an effort to remove school resource officers and limit the arrest powers of security guards. County Executive Angela Alsobrooks says she is against the removal of those officers and instead would like to invest more in mental health services. Last month, Maryland lawmakers overrode a veto of expungement legislation passed in the 2020 legislation. House Bill 1336 repealed the unit rule that prohibits expungement of certain charges. The Job Opportunities Task Force wants to get word out about the override. The organization is now working with policymakers to implement the changes so that those affected can get charges removed from their records.
The idea that because of a technical rule, because of the technicalities that drive or determine how charges are coupled or how they're reflected publicly, could prevent someone from getting relief in the form of criminal record expungement, particularly when it relates to non-convictions. And so the unit rule, there was a 15-year focus to repeal the unit rule. And this rule prohibited individuals from being able to expunge non-convictions that by law are eligible for expungement, prohibiting them from expunging those non-convictions if they were attached to a conviction that by law was ineligible. And so you have individuals who were being denied employment and housing opportunities because of these non-conviction charges from years ago. Many times they did not even commit the crimes, but yet it's being reflected on their record as if they did.
JOTF says thousands of Marylanders will benefit from the repeal of the unit rule. While many residents worry about housing expenses, according to a new Maryland Realtors Group poll, the results show that 57% of people say the cost to buy a home is too high. Also, 1 in 5 households worry about missing rent or mortgage payment in the next 3 months. Meantime, the Realtors Group is kicking off a campaign increasing housing inventory and opportunities.
Our Open Doors to Stronger Neighborhoods campaign, opendoorsmaryland.org, will be a multi-year effort to bring attention to a problem that will only get worse if we don't act and will disproportionately impact communities who are already facing housing challenges.
Lenders identify several factors preventing them from purchasing a home. Some of these are 56% have a job but do not make enough money to afford a home. 55% have too much debt from student loans. 54% don't have enough money for down payment and closing costs, and 48% have too much consumer or credit card debt. Finally, these challenges are even more stark for Maryland citizens historically underrepresented in
the survey was conducted from November 30th through December 3rd of last year. A growing worldwide movement to make menstrual products more accessible to young girls has come to Maryland. A bill that would make sanitary items free in public schools passed the House last week. It would require that each public school provide the products via dispensaries in school restrooms.
The point of the bill is to make sure that we are providing menstrual products in all of our schools across the state for use by the students in the bathrooms in the school, and that's a key important piece of that, so that students have access to necessary hygienic products the way they currently have access to toilet paper and paper towels and soap and other products we readily provide now.
I think a lot of people think of this as a gender issue only, and yet you are the sponsor of this. Tell me why you're involved.
You know, it's funny. I first heard about this as a legislative issue when, and I don't even remember the name of the state, but another state passed a similar bill. And I thought, and I went to a colleague on the House floor who happened to be a female colleague, and I said, this is common sense. Why aren't we doing this? And she said, we should be, put in the bill. And I literally wondered, I said, would it be appropriate coming from me? And the response was, why not?
A Senate version of the bill also passed, but with amendments. The two chambers must reconcile the differences before the legislation can go to the governor for his signature. A Hyattsville firm agrees to pay a $60,000 settlement of a claim that it violated the Federal Americans with Disabilities Act. Optimal Solutions and Technologies fired an employee who needed 6 weeks of after-hours medical treatment for a benign brain tumor. The settlement with the Equal Employment Opportunities Commission last week resolved a lawsuit the agency filed on behalf of Michael Tyson more than 3 years ago in U.S. District Court in Greenbelt. The ADA prohibits discrimination on a perceived or actual disability. A Prince George's County organization receives $20,000 from the Miller History Fund. The Accokeek Foundation, located on 200 acres of Piscataway Park, is one of 11 winners this year. The group plans to use the grant to enhance its visitor and virtual educational resources. It also plans to create virtual tours, webinars, and self-guided tours.
Mike Miller always showed up at everything that we did. He was a constant supporter of the Accokeek Foundation, a real lover of history, and always willing to talk about Maryland history, especially Prince George's County and its agricultural history.
We're really trying to fulfill a need that we see in Maryland's heritage network and our cultural infrastructure. There really isn't as much dedicated support for heritage organizations.
Well, let's get a check on our 3-day weather forecast. Tonight, mostly clear with a low around 32. Wednesday, mostly clear with a high near 56 and a low around 36. Thursday, sunny with a high near 50 and a low around 28 degrees. Friday, sunny with a daytime high near 46 and an evening low around 30. And now for the community calendar. The City Council of Hyattsville is now accepting applications for business COVID relief grants. Qualifying restaurants will receive up to $2,000 to be used towards necessities such as rent, PPE gear, and other essentials. The relief fund will accept a request from locally owned and operating restaurants, distilleries, breweries, and a few others licensed to operate in the city of Hyattsville. To apply, visit hyattsville.org/restaurants. And that's our CTV News update. Join us again tomorrow. Have a good night.
It's so sad. It's not.